Great is thy faithfulness. This is the story of Dr. Verent Mills, the father of orphans. Dr. Verent John Russell Mills, affectionately known as the father of orphans, was truly an amazing example of a lifetime of dedicated service to the Lord and mankind. His love touched the hearts of multitudes of people in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and 6 continents. On November 21st, 1996, he went to be with the Lord. We are saddened by the passage of this great benefactor, teacher, spiritual mentor, and dear friend. For Dr. Mills, however, it was a day of victory, rejoicing, and celebration. Indeed, he had fought the good fight, finished the race, and kept the faith. Finally, there was laid up for him the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award him on that day. Dr. Mills was born on May 12, 1913, in Birmingham, England. At 6 years of age, he and his family moved to Manitoba, Canada. He was quite mischievous during his childhood years. It was his mother's tears and constant prayers which turned his life completely around. Before he completed high school, he had planned to enter apprenticeship to become a diesel engineer, but the Lord had a different plan for him. One day, he attended a church rally, and the speaker happened to be a missionary on furlough from China. At the end of the sermon, the speaker challenged the congregation to join him to go to China to spread the gospel. With the faith of Abraham, young Mills was the first one to respond to God's calling, to leave his family, friends, a promising career, country, and go to a land he knew nothing about. On October 1st, 1931, despite his father's objection, he said goodbye to his family. With a Bible, a pair of shoes, 2 changes of clothes, and $5.50 in his pocket, he boarded the train for Vancouver, British Columbia, where he set sail to China. A month later, he arrived at his final destination, Gumyu, Guangdong Province. His new home was nothing but a small sampan on a river. The river itself was both his toilet and bathtub. A traditional Chinese scholar came to the sampan each day to teach Mills the Chinese language. After several months of intense memorization, he was able to carry on simple conversations with the local people. His early Chinese pronunciation frequently brought on fits of laughter, since invariably it meant something completely different from what he had intended to say. This did not stop him from making progress. Rather, it gave him a deeper determination to master the new language. He also used his free time to help local people with cleaning, repairing, and launching boats. Before long, he won the friendship and trust of the locals, living amongst the villagers as if he was one of them. After 5 months of separation from family and friends, he wrote to his fiancée, Mrs. L. McKinney, "I am so lonely in China, I don't think I can continue any longer unless you come to China as well." What a commitment to each other. Without hesitation, Miss Kenny sent a telegram to Mills and set sail to China. Upon her arrival in Gumyu on April 2nd, 1932, they had a traditional Chinese wedding, and the entire village witnessed this first ever foreign bride in a small little known fishing village in South China. Their honeymoon was spent in studying the language and going to the villages spreading the gospel of Jesus. Their commitment to serve God first, His work second, and family third was the guiding principle of the rest of their lives. Since the sampan was not big enough, they rented a small hut with a dirt floor, straw roof, and mud walls without windows. To provide better ventilation, Mills made windows in the walls and whitewashed the hut throughout. A big commotion resulted, since the people believed evil spirits would fly out of the house and bring bad luck to the village. The commotion would not subside until Mills promised to take all responsibility for anything that might happen. It was this and many other superstitions among the villagers which convinced the Mills that God had sent them to China for a special mission, freeing the villagers from the bondage of sin and superstition through the mighty power of Jesus Christ. The turning point occurred in Qinglin. One night he was awakened by noises outside his room. There he found a man laying on the ground, naked, bleeding, and convulsing, and foaming at his mouth. With no time to think of the correct Chinese words, he commanded in English the demon to come out of the man in the name of Jesus. Miraculously, the man stopped convulsing and opened his eyes. The next day, the entire village was talking about the miracle. Mills took the opportunity to explain to the people the power of God and his salvation for mankind. Over 300 people each day came from all over the greater Qinglin area, listening to the message of the gospel, and many souls were saved. Among them was the district magistrate, who in turn led the entire village of Bakwan to the Lord. The first church was formed there in 1936. During the next several years, Mills formed the Qingyun Evangelistic Band. They traveled all over the Guangdong province, performing music with Chinese songs he wrote himself, preaching the gospel, establishing churches, and training local people to be pastors. Altogether, 9 churches were formed by Mills in the interior of Guangdong province. In addition, he and another missionary, J. Elmer Morrison, founded the Evangel Bible School, training local pastors and Bible women to carry out the work they had established. Mills also organized 200+ villages around Qingyun area to build a dike to control flooding, which occurred each summer. During this time, the Mills encountered many tests of their faith. One month, they were so short of funds they did not have enough money to pay the rent. As was his habit, he decided to fast and pray. After 3 days of fasting and praying, they received a letter from northern China, written by a businessman he had met on the ship en route to China in 1931. Pinned to the back of the letter was a check for $90 Chinese currency, just enough to pay the bills that month with a little extra. The Lord is indeed faithful. The letter was written 1 week before Mills started to fast and pray. God had already provided before he knew he needed his help. God had utilized the delay of the mail system to test and strengthen his faith in him. In 1937, the Japanese invaded China. By December 1938, the Japanese had closed all the roads and cut off all food and medical supplies to the Xiyup area. By 1940, famine in the area was very severe, and people were dying so rapidly they could not bury them fast enough. Reluctantly, Mills said goodbye to his wife and 4 children as the government evacuated the family to Australia. Full of compassion and empathy, Mills organized the Sino-American Relief Committee. At the first meeting, local leaders asked him about the finances. Calmly, Mills replied, "Brethren, during the past 10 years in China, day by day, I have lived on one character, Sun, meaning faith. Do not let the finances worry you. Trust the Lord, and he will assume the responsibility." The next day, he traveled to Chongqing to seek help from every relief agency he knew of. By the time he returned to Xiyup, he had raised $618,700,000 in Chinese currency. In addition, the central government agreed to supply him military rice at a 75% discount. He then organized a train of 1,100 coolies to carry the rice over the mountains into the Xiyup area. 21 soup kitchens were set up, feeding over 14,000 people each day. His singular action and leadership reversed the downward spiral of famine and destruction there. It was during this period of time that he developed a tender spot in his heart towards suffering little children. The war had created countless numbers of orphans. One by one, he took them in and placed them in children's refuges, which he created from abandoned schools and ancestral halls. With what little food and supplies he had, he managed to feed and clothe them and nurse them back to health. Soon the orphanages were filled to capacity, yet he could not turn down even one child. Frequently he told his workers, "Don't worry, just add another pair of chopsticks and a little more water to the porridge." When the Japanese army advanced to within 15 miles of the orphanages, they had to evacuate the children further inland. One of the trips involved some 140 children. The children had to carry a tube of rice around their waist and climb over 450 miles of rugged mountain ranges, detouring constantly to avoid the Japanese artillery. Some of the children were too small to walk long hours. Mills would carry them himself, 6 at a time, using a bamboo pole over his shoulder, with a basket at each end of the pole and 3 children in each basket. Only by the grace of God were they able to reach their final destination, Gukong, without losing a child. By 1945, there were over 700 children in 5 orphanages. In August 1945, the Japanese surrendered. Thinking that their work was done, the relief agencies pulled out of China one by one. Mills was very low in cash, and the rice would be used up in a matter of weeks. So as he typically handled crises, Mills asked the children to pray for him, and he left for Canton. Miraculously, through another friend, Mills was introduced to Dr. J. Calvert Clark, founder of China's Children's Fund in Richmond, Virginia. Dr. Clark agreed to take in all 700 children. The 5 orphanages became part of China's Children's Fund. To ensure a steady supply of rice, Mills decided to move the orphanages to Canton. Through President Chiang Kai-shek, Mills was acquainted with General Chung Fat Foy, who showed him an abandoned school for Japanese Army dependents. With the help of a steamship company, the 700 children were moved to a new school in Canton. After settling in, Mills was concerned about the future of the children, so he started a comprehensive job training program in the orphanage. In addition, Mills instituted morning devotions and evening prayer time, providing spiritual feeding and guidance to the children as well. Impressed with how Mills was able to turn orphan outcasts into productive members of society, Dr. Clark asked Mills to join China's Children's Fund to become the organization's regional director of North China, Japan, and Korea. Mills joined CCF in September 1947. In a matter of months, Mills lined up 42 orphanages for CCF, assisting 5,113 children in northern China. Simultaneously, he started the work in Korea and Japan. In summer 1949, communists took over China. All foreign companies were closed down. The Mills were under house arrest. One day, Mills was called to the police headquarters. He was accused of being an international spy, setting up orphanages as a cover. Mills was interrogated intensely for 6 hours. Finally, Mills said, "Everyone knew what I had been doing. I have nothing to hide. My conscience is clear. But if you decide to kill me anyway, please honor my only request. After the execution, please open my chest and open my heart. You will find nothing but 2 words inside, Chung Gao, meaning China." The interrogator, looking directly into Mills' eyes, suddenly authorized his release. It was a direct intervention from God. The ordeal was not over, however. All CCF properties were confiscated, and the communists replaced all staff with their own personnel so that they could start brainwashing the children. Frustrated and totally helpless, Mills realized that there was nothing they could do but leave the country. During the 4 months the Mills waited to leave China, the communists harassed them, including 5 unscheduled visits to their home, usually in the wee hours of the morning. Each time, the entire house was searched. They could find nothing to incriminate the Mills. Finally, they were permitted to leave the country. After returning to the U.S., Mills reported immediately to CCF headquarters in Richmond, Virginia. For the next few months, he traveled extensively to Japan and Korea, establishing orphanages under CCF in both countries. By 1951, CCF was assisting some 4,000 children in 23 orphanages in Korea and over 6,000 children in 60 orphanages in Japan. Mills also founded the Izumi Junior College, Japan's very first professional school of social work, which was built right next door to CCF's orphanage, the Bach Memorial Home. To this day, the college continues to provide professional training to social workers specializing in child welfare. Because so much work had been done in Japan and Korea, and projects were started in other Asian countries as well, China's Children's Fund, while retaining the abbreviation CCF, changed name to Christian Children's Fund, Incorporated, on February 6, 1951. Shortly after, Mills was asked to become the overseas director responsible for operations worldwide. With his new role, the Mills moved back to Hong Kong in the fall of 1951. In the early 1950s, Hong Kong was swarming with millions of refugees from China. Among the refugees were some 300 children from CCF orphanages in Canton. They made it to Hong Kong by walking 200 miles along railroad tracks at night and hiding themselves in the woods during the day. The most urgent need was to provide a safe and healthy place for the children to live. In 1952, Mills undertook an ambitious project, building a massive cottage-plan orphanage called Children's Garden. This campus would consist of 66 cottages, each housing 13 children, and a cottage mother who would be a widow or a woman abandoned by her husband. The idea was to deinstitutionalize orphanages and recreate a supportive, home-like environment to promote better emotional support and psychological development of the children. Mills discovered a piece of land in Hong Kong at the base of Saddleback Mountain, which could be acquired via a public auction. After much prayer, Mills decided to go through the auction. It was truly God's blessing. On the day of the auctioneer waited 2 hours, but no one except Mills showed up for the bidding. Mills got the land at the rock-bottom price of 10 cents per square foot, or Hong Kong $120,000 for 28 acres. Mills spent the next 5 years building Children's Garden. He personally drove the bulldozer and tractors. After the construction was completed, dignitaries from all over the world, including Mrs. Indira Gandhi of India, came to visit Children's Garden. Mills' effort went beyond helping orphans in Hong Kong. Seeing thousands of children in resettlement areas without any schooling, Mills proposed to the government to let organizations such as CCF operate schools on the rooftop of each of the H-block buildings in the resettlement areas. This started the concept of rooftop schools. At its peak, CCF was sponsoring 30-some rooftop schools in Hong Kong. Duplicating the success of the Hong Kong operation, Mills quickly expanded the work of CCF to help children in other countries including India, Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, Africa, South America, and even Europe. By 1958, CCF was helping over 250,000 children worldwide. In 1958, Mills was asked to return to CCF Richmond headquarters. His experience of 25 years in the field became a tremendous asset to the organization. When Dr. Clark stepped down in 1963, Verent Kemp became the executive director of CCF, but insisted that Mills become the director of operations. On February 15, 1970, he succeeded Mr. Kemp to become the executive director of CCF. Mills' efforts had been recognized by citations from President of the Republic of China, the President of Korea, and the Emperor of Japan. The degree of Doctor of Humane Letters was awarded him by the University of Seoul, Korea. In 1980, Pope John Paul VI awarded him the Golden Medal Benemerenti, Benefactor of Mankind. He was the only Protestant minister ever to receive such a recognition from the Vatican. Unfortunately, Dr. Mills suffered 3 heart attacks, the last one while in Guatemala inspecting the aftermath of a devastating earthquake. In 1980, he underwent a triple bypass surgery. The following year, he retired from CCF, the one and only organization he had worked for in the last 36 years. His life came full circle after his retirement. Together with another retired missionary, Dr. Eugene Hill, and several Chinese Christians in the community, they founded the Chinese Baptist Church of Richmond, Virginia. In 1987, the Mills moved to Fresno, California. With some physical limitations, Mills continued to be very active in Rotary in the community. Also, he became a very respected elder of the Fresno Chinese Gospel Church, an interdenominational Christian church. Most importantly, he became the mentor of a church member who was attending the Mennonite Brethren Biblical Seminary. Every week, Mills spent time with him going over the sermon and teaching the practicality of being a pastor, just as he had done in China years before. In November 1996, Mills' health deteriorated significantly. He underwent repeat coronary bypass surgery without any complications, but the heart was not pumping on its own despite maximal medications and cardiac-assisted devices. It appeared that God had turned off the switch inside. Without ever waking up from anesthesia, he went to be with the Lord on November 21st, 1996. Dr. Mills had lived a life of faith. By faith, he responded to God's call to go to China. By faith, he overcame cultural barriers and established churches and a Bible school there. By faith, he endured incredible hardship during the war and reversed the devastation of famine in the Sia area. By faith, he responded to another special calling, taking care of suffering children, victims of senseless wars, violence, and human conflict in China, Korea, and worldwide. For this, he was affectionately called the Father of Orphans. Dr. Mills is no longer with us physically, but we know he continues to live within our hearts. We believe God sent him into our lives for a special purpose, to show us how to live by faith and how to love and serve others without asking for anything in return, for the ultimate reward comes from God. The following poem, written in Chinese on behalf of all the CCF children, sums up his life. Our beloved Papa, whispering and comforting, he pours out his compassion and empathy. Laboring tediously, he perseveres until all is accomplished. Respected by many, he is known as the Father of Orphans. With the loving kindness of a shepherd, one by one he guides them for God's name's sake. As a teacher and a dear friend, he bears fruit overflowing. Rejoicing with the Lord, one day we will meet again in heaven.